All right, so you missed or are repeating the lecture about understanding the nanoscale. So when we're converting things, why is that important? Why don't we just write 0.00000000001 meters instead of 1 nanometer? I think it's quite obvious. It's annoying. It takes a lot of time. So we need to know how to convert things. Speaking of meters, you need to have a standard. So where did 1 meter come from? So imagine a meter stick. Like, why is that 1 meter? Well, back in the day, they decided in 1791 that the standard length would be 1/10,000th of the distance from the equator to the North Pole. They just decided, all right, that much is going to be 1 meter. And they had this special bar that was made of platinum and iridium, and it was basically in Paris, and it was exactly this 1 meter length. Now it's a little more precisely defined. It is the length of the path traveled by light in a vacuum in this time interval. So that fraction of a second. Light travels that distance, that is the definition of 1 meter. They've always had interesting standards of measurement throughout time. You've probably heard of a baker's dozen. That came about because back in the day when a dozen is always 12, but if you shortchanged a customer and you were a baker, the threat was that you could have your hand or your finger chopped off. So just to be safe, they decided they would start giving 13 rolls or 13 pieces of whatever the pastry item was, just to be safe. Another interesting standard back in the Middle Ages, every year you could send one family member and you would get 3 feet of gold thread for the year. And they would determine the length based on someone's foot size. So I joked here, which member of the family would you send? Of course, you'd send Bigfoot, the person with the biggest foot. In class, we did a little activity. How many prefixes can you name? Like centi, milli, etc., etc. Okay, and so we had like little cards, and people tried to match those up. And there are a lot of different prefixes. In this class, of course, we're going to use nano a lot. We're also going to use micro a lot, and everything kind of in between from a meter and smaller. So this is an interesting question. If nanotechnology is the thing right now, what's next? Picotechnology, which is 10 to the minus 12. Femto, atto, zepto, yocto, 10 to the minus 24. Well, not really, okay? Because at 0.1 nanometers, you're talking about the size of atoms, and those are the most stable building blocks. Okay, if you're ripping apart atoms, you're really talking about nuclear chemistry, and that's completely different. Right now in science, they're having enough trouble working with single atoms and figuring that out. So it's going to be nanotech for a while. Speaking of that, nanotechnology has been called the next big step, the next industrial revolution. So here's a little picture here. It shows steam engines, railways, automobiles, computers versus the impact on society, and then nanotechnology is a huge step. Interesting fact too, the computers that used to navigate a 747 would take up the same amount of space as a 747. So computers used to take up entire rooms. So let's see if you're comfortable with metric conversions. Start with this one. So it's 0.004 meters. If you want to convert that into millimeters, the base right here is meters. We're really moving 1, 2, 3 steps to the right. That means we need to move the decimal 1, 2, 3. So the answer is 0.004 meters is the same as 4 millimeters. Okay, let's do another one here. What about this one? 80 nanometers. Actually, I should write this off to the right a little bit. 80 nanometers is how many meters? Well, nano is here, and our base meters is there. We got to go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Here's the decimal. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And then you fill all of these spaces with zeros. So there should be 7 zeros before the 8. 80 nanometers is 8 times 10 to the minus 8 meters. Okay, and there's a couple more here to practice. 3 microns or micrometers equal how many nanometers? Here is micro. 1, 2, 3 steps to the right is nano. 1, 2, 3. That's 3,000 nanometers. Okay? And then the last one here, 5 kilometers. Get that into centimeters. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the right. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You've got space to fit the number 500,000 in there. Okay? All right. So a couple different ways to do conversions. I just showed you moving the decimal. There's also dimensional analysis, which is basically using unit conversions to cancel out the units. So let's do an example. Oops, I don't want to give it away yet. Okay, what if you want to convert 3 feet into millimeters? Well, you know 1 foot is 12 inches. Okay, so you set it up so that feet are going to cancel out. You could stop right here and say, okay, that's 36 inches. Or you could keep going. You know, or maybe you know, 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. Okay, so you could stop there and calculate, but let's keep going. 1 centimeter is 10 millimeters. So now, if I multiply everything across the top, don't forget that 3. So 3 times 12 times 2.54 times 10, we're going to get the answer. It's 914 millimeters. Okay. Let's do one more. This one's a little trickier. This one you've got to convert centimeters cubed into inches cubed. Okay, so we've got 5.4 centimeters cubed. There are 2.54 centimeters in 1 inch, and this is where a lot of people stop. But it's centimeters cubed that you're canceling out. So you really need to cube this whole set of parentheses, or you can write it out and show that you really have to do this whole thing 3 times to get your answer into inches cubed and cancel out that centimeters cubed. And for the record, this one comes out to be 0.33 inches cubed. All right, so then in class we did a little scavenger hunt to kind of figure out some conversions around the room for some extra practice. So don't get discouraged if you're having a hard time doing conversions. Come get help. Once you kind of have some practice, they do get easier, I promise.